Story 1. When asked back in 2019 why the British don't like Trump, Nate White wrote the following, which puts it perfectly, although he's clearly even worse this time around. A few things spring to mind. Trump lacks certain qualities that the British traditionally esteem. For instance, he has no class, no charm, no coolness, no credibility, no compassion, no wit, no warmth, no wisdom, no subtlety, no sensitivity, no self-awareness, no humility, no honor, and no grace. All qualities, funnily enough, with which his predecessor, Mr. Obama, was generously blessed. So for us, the stark contrast does throw Trump's limitations into embarrassingly sharp relief. Plus, we like a laugh. And while Trump may be laughable, he has never once said anything wry, witty, or even faintly amusing, not once, ever. I don't say that rhetorically. I mean it quite literally. Not once, not ever. And that fact is particularly disturbing to the British sensibility. For us, to lack humor is almost inhuman. But with Trump, it's a fact. He doesn't even seem to understand what a joke is. His idea of a joke is a crass comment, an illiterate insult, a casual act of cruelty. Trump is a troll. And like all trolls, he is never funny, and he never laughs. He only crows or jeers. And scarily, he doesn't just talk in crude, witless insults. He actually thinks in them. His mind is a simple bot-like algorithm of petty prejudices and knee-jerk nastiness. There is never any underlayer of irony, complexity, nuance, or depth. It's all surface. Some Americans might see this as refreshingly upfront. Well, we don't. We see it as having no inner world, no soul. In Britain, we traditionally side with David, not Goliath. All our heroes are plucky underdogs. Robin Hood, Dick Whittington, Oliver Twist. Trump is neither plucky nor an underdog. He is the exact opposite of that. He's not even a spoiled rich boy or a greedy fat cat. He's more a fat white slug, a Jabba the Hutt of privilege. And worse, he is that most unforgivable of all things to the British, a bully. That is, except when he is among bullies. Then he suddenly transforms into a sniveling sidekick instead. Story 2. Canadian nurse here. The whole Trump era changed how my patients talk about healthcare. Whenever they complain about wait times, they quickly add, "But at least we're not paying American prices." It's become our go-to comfort phrase. Story 3. As an Australian, it's horrible looking on and seeing a president making moves indistinguishable from what it would look like if Russia planted an agent in the top job. Our values are no longer aligned. We can no longer trust. And given our defense and security are reliant on reciprocal trust, it's alarming to know that unthinkable arguments for non-intervention and betrayal are now possible in Trump's world of expediency and blackmail. He's pretty much using the threat of violence by Russia to try to economically blackmail a minerals deal out of Ukraine right now. That's collusion and extortion. It's like losing the friend you looked up to because of a drug addiction. They're not rational, but you're powerless to stop them from destroying themselves. It's sad. Story 4. Well, since he keeps referring to my prime minister as a governor and is trying to annex my country, my thoughts are not great. That said, he has done something that has not happened in a long time. He has united Canada. He has forced us to diversify our trading partners and to start shopping Canadian over American. We are going to take a bit of a hit initially, but I truly believe that our economy is going to strengthen as a result of his bungled tactics. As a person, I think he is hateful, racist, transphobic, and incompetent, and I truly hope that when he dies, he realizes that he was the villain all along. Story 5. I mostly feel bad for all the good, normal Americans I know who are just trying to live their lives. They didn't ask for any of this and are likely ashamed to be represented on the global stage by such an awful bunch of bozos. Story 6. I am from Russia, and some may think Russians adore Donald Trump, and some brainwashed people really do, but I despise this person. I despise him for what he does to Ukraine, and I despise him for what he does to Europe. I despise him for his actions towards Vladimir Putin and calling him an ally. I think life will never be the same. I am afraid rough times are coming for the whole world now. I never really liked the United States, but now I hate them. Story 7. I'm concerned for Americans, especially groups he is using as scapegoats, or starting culture wars with as distractions. In terms of my own country and the rest of the world, my main concerns are war. If he sends us into World War III, it won't be good for anyone, especially with Irish neutrality now on the chopping block. Climate. The United States is a big polluter and it's only going to get worse. Obviously, this affects the whole planet. Disease. If he's getting the Food and Drug Administration, backing out of the World Health Organization, putting media blackouts on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, reducing access to vaccines, etc., then it's only a matter of time before big surges of preventable disease. Diseases which can spread to other parts of the planet. I really would love not to see a resurgence of polio or something. Economy. We have big American companies employing a lot of people here. We also export some goods to the United States. And what I think of him, well, he is obviously a fascist. I'm not sure how Americans don't see that. Do you guys not cover how fascism arose in history class? Story 8. The way Trump's administration seems intent on betraying its allies who fought for the United States of America when the United States invoked Article 5 after September 11th, is despicable. If they go through with it, it will go down as one of the greatest betrayals in history. Story 9. I am British and I think he is loathsome. He does not seem to have a soul. You never see him happy with his family. He seems utterly toxic to everyone and every conversation. He has no class at all. His inner monologue must be utterly vile and hate-ridden. Story 10. I am Brazilian and worried about next year's elections and how they are going to be impacted by this individual and his group of criminals like Elon Musk. Jair Bolsonaro's supporters are already praising him, and they will certainly try to replicate some of his tactics. And of course, Elon Musk is already trying to create issues here. I am just very tired of how our politics is just a reflection of the United States. Story 11. As a Portuguese man, I see Donald Trump as a deeply destabilizing force, not just for the United States, but for global democracy. His past term already strained United States-European Union relations and fueled populist rhetoric, but his recent alignment with Russian interests and the increasingly fascist undertones of his movement make him an even bigger concern. His influence encourages division, authoritarianism, and a disregard for democratic norms. These are things that Europe and the world cannot afford to tolerate. Story 12. I'm from Norway, and every single person thinks he is a ridiculous idiot. I've overheard young and old people talking about him, and everyone thinks he is an awful person. Story 13. My sister in Thailand is scrambling to help organize the United States Agency for International Development Workers abandoned there. Since they are all highly qualified, compassionate people, most of that work is in connecting them with new housing and helping find local jobs to do similar work. Think people whose life purpose is protecting children from malaria and diseases. Neither they nor the communities they served should have been treated that way. Story 14. He just surrendered to Vladimir Putin. He disregarded the sacrifices of people's grandfathers who died on the beaches of Normandy, as well as the efforts of people's fathers who bravely stood against communism, fought for freedom, and opposed dictators like Putin. He disrespected those sacrifices. He is endangering the entire Western way of life and values. He is putting millions of jobs at risk on both sides of the Atlantic and endangering people's lives. My country has a 1,000-kilometer border with Russia, and if the call comes, I will go and defend my country and my brothers who live here because we still have values to defend. I don't think the United States has any values left, and I feel like they need to leave Europe. They are not acting like allies. They are not acting like friends. They are acting like enemies threatening European countries. I don't think we have even seen the worst yet. Story 15. I'm Canadian and have served alongside Americans in Afghanistan. I have love for America and Americans and know that most Americans are passengers in the car crash unfolding before our eyes. That said, Trump is the embodiment of every closed-minded, selfish, bigoted, intolerant, brash, boorish, and short-sighted American stereotype you can think of. It is also, unfortunately, the voter base he appealed most to and is now running the country into the ground. Everyone who said, yeah, he's going to do these bad things, but at least we're going to be better off for it, are now seeing how this is akin to thinking the stripper is actually in love with you. He is a grifter, a charlatan, and a petty thug. He's a coward who will drag everyone down with him in his vain pursuit of whatever vain and megalomaniacal end state he desires. I pray for America and Americans. Story 16. I'm South African. So, thanks to their abrupt stopping of aid, a whole bunch of people are facing getting really sick and possibly dying due to the lack of medication for human immunodeficiency virus and acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. I don't necessarily believe we should have been accepting that support in the first place, but you don't just withdraw life-saving aid without notice unless you're inconsiderate. Story 17. Aussie here. We have no less than two political parties wanting to imitate him and his nonsense politics, and an election on the horizon. Both will have the support of Rupert Murdoch's media empire because they both worship at his altar. I do have a sinking feeling. Story 18. United Kingdom. Here he is viewed as a clown and weak. He never does what he says he will do but did do exactly what Kamala said he would. Story 19. Australia has a federal election shortly. I worry about the Make America Great Again influence over here with our liberal conservative party in the race. There are a few people I've spoken to here that love Donald Trump. I reckon that candidate would suck up to Donald Trump or adopt similar policies, which would be bad. Yet, we need a strong leader to stand up to him if and when alliances go sour or whatever happens. He's already tacked on some tariffs which we had reduced or whatever. I feel like it's all up in the air, and there's no certainty for the future now. Story 20. My thoughts are on the American voter who somehow thought this was a good idea. Not once, but twice. The guy fantasizing about being intimate with his daughter on the Howard Stern show in 2004. Pitiful. Story 21. Canadian here, I don't hate Americans at all, but I do hate their leader and his garbage rhetoric. The world's loudest, worst businessman propped up by the most insecure individuals of all time. Let's not forget he's a rapist too, people. Story 22. From Finland, well, we're buying United States fighter jets, but at least we know if he had the chance, he would feed us to Russia immediately. Luckily, we're more than capable of defending ourselves. And in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, we Europeans, especially Nordics, stick together even when the orange idiot abandons us. Story 23. Canadian here. Considering he keeps threatening to annex our country, disrespecting our prime minister, and this whole trade war nonsense, I really hate him. I already disliked him for his actions before and for what he has done and is going to do to decent Americans. Now, with what he is doing to Canada, Mexico, and Ukraine, I hope every day that he and all of his supporters face the fate they deserve. There are no good Trump supporters. Story 24. I know this thread is for non-Americans, but we sensible Americans are scared of what our country is becoming. This is some borderline American horror story situation. We are undoing literal decades of social progress, and 1/3 of Americans are on board. I have people close to me who voted for Trump only for him to take their government contracting jobs. I also have people who were very adamant about Biden censoring things. Now the top 4 major platforms pander to the right government and spread propaganda. We are literally living in a situation like the novel 1984. Story 25. Non-American living in the United States. His brand of nationalism and fascism is exactly why I left my country. It's stunning to see the United States go down that same route. My leaders, on the other hand, seem emboldened and validated by him. Story 26. I'm Canadian, and I'll never see Americans the same way again. They are not our allies anymore. We cannot trust them. There are tens of millions of Americans who are eager to destroy our country. We will not be able to just forgive and forget once Donald Trump is no longer in power. Story 27. Hi. Dane here. We are having some long overdue discussions about how we take care of ourselves if or when we cannot lean on the North Atlantic Treaty Organization for security. We also get to take a long look around and see who are actually friendly to Europe now that the United States is on a spree of pushing away allies. Oh, and I get to practice my new hobby, watching Greenland separatists self-implode. That was the brightest way I could put it. Story 28. Here in Sweden, it's oddly terrifying. I'm not a Swede, but have lived here basically my entire life. And I know people that share Donald Trump's ideals and actions. Thankfully, not many do share his views. Many here definitely find him horrible. Most of us are more or less annoyed, since he'll be dominating Swedish news for years to come. Despite them being the minority, the fear lingers that we might go back in time. The rise of neo-Nazism is affecting even Sweden. Swedes, of all people, should not accept that, and yet, we are becoming more untrustworthy of the government, more scared of changes, making enemies left and right, as we are slowly losing acceptance and care of our own and others. Our language is already being slowly twisted, as Swedish English is becoming more prominent. We are following the steps of the United States slowly, and with some of our parties blatantly in favor of Russia and Donald Trump, I fear Sweden will make yet another mistake and adopt the tactics of the United States. Story 29. I am from a communist country and used to think that the United States was a great country. Unlike us, who can only vote for a member of parliament representing us in the regional government, not the head of state, we envy Americans for that. But now, I think that the way my country does it may be a good thing. At the very least, our government elected someone qualified for the job, competent, and not a felon.